since I picked up photography in 2018, all I've known in the digital camera space has been Sony cameras, and I'm on my third Sony now, and I've never been disappointed with any of the Sonys that I've owned. They're great cameras, but I wouldn't necessarily call them fun. Because photography and videography are my jobs, that's how I make all my income, the Sony feels more like a tool, and because of that, I don't love picking it up to shoot personal moments and like more everyday scenes. But recently I've been trying to push myself to shoot more. I didn't only want to be shooting when I was doing client work or when I was going into New York to do street photography. I wanted to kind of get photos of everyday life and more personal moments. So that's why back in June I ended up picking up a Ricoh GRiiix. There's a few reasons why I picked up this camera specifically, and in this video I kind of just want to talk about my experience using this for the last month and change, tell you kind of what I like, what I don't like, why I picked up the IIIx over just the 3, and yeah, show you some of the work that I've been able to create. So if you know anything about the Ricoh GR line of cameras, you would know how very popular they've gotten in recent years, especially in the street photography community, and for good reason. They're small and they're very powerful, and I've been interested in getting one of these for a long time now because those are two things that are super enticing as a street photographer, but I've held out for so long because I was kind of hoping that a GR4 was in the works. When Ricoh released the HDF versions of these cameras, I kind of thought that might have put a hamper in a timeline for the GR4, so I ended up just buying this used from my friend Mike, and it's in great condition. Now there are cheaper point and shoots that I was thinking about, and some of the other options I was weighing were the Sony RX100 V2, the IIIx LX100 II, and surprisingly enough, the Fuji X100 VI. But in this decision, the deciding factor was size. So in this case, size does matter. The IIIx has a micro four thirds sensor, I believe, and the Sony RX100 has a 1-inch sensor. So I thought if I was gonna get a camera that was basically of the same size in the body, I would just go for this. And I wrote off the Fuji X100 VI because it was bigger and I didn't really need the video capabilities, because if I wanna shoot video, then I just have my Sony for that. I also knew that I wanted to use it for street photography, and this would help me be a little bit more inconspicuous, especially when I'm traveling to places that aren't really accustomed to photography. And I could also just use it as an everyday carry. Now I went with the X, which is the 40mm full frame equivalent, over the regular GR3, which is a 28mm full frame equivalent, and for two reasons. Number one, 40mm is a little bit closer to 35, which is what I know best. And reason number two is 28mm is just a little bit too wide for the way that I shoot street now. And I'm not saying I wouldn't like to get a GR3 in the future, so I have both focal lengths. But I think if you're only gonna use it as an everyday carry, only taking photos of your friends and your family, and you're not necessarily a street photographer, 28mm would be the way to go, because you don't have to think about your compositions that much. But right now, I think for the way that I compose my photos, 40mm was the better option. So I forgot an SD card to put into the Ricoh, so good thing there was internal memory, because I think I got a few decent shots, but I have one in my Sony, which I have with me, so I'm just gonna pop it in there, but internal memory is a big plus. All right, now let's get into some of the things that I like about this camera. Number one, it's small. I think it really is a pocketable camera if you don't have the hood and the thumb grip attached. You don't need to bring a fanny pack or a sling bag when you're out shooting with this thing, and if your purpose for this camera is to shoot more photos like it is mine, then you probably just don't want to have the camera in the bag regardless. So I have a wrist strap on this camera, and if I wanted to do something with two hands, then I can just drop it without feel like it's breaking my wrist, which is good because it just reduces fatigue and allows me to shoot longer. Staying on the topic of size, this is more of an inconspicuous camera than my Sony. When I was in Costa Rica, aside from the fact that I'm just a white dude who sticks out like a sore thumb, I drew more attention to myself because of the camera and the lens that I was carrying around with me. When I'm traveling, a zoom lens is usually the most practical, especially if I'm going to somewhere new, because I don't know what to expect, so I don't want to be tied down to a certain focal length. But for the most part, zoom lenses on full frame and APS-C cameras are bigger, so they draw more attention. Now, even though the Ricoh has a fixed lens, I would absolutely sacrifice the zoom range for being able to blend in more and possibly get more of the shots that I want. The files are also pretty easy to edit. Now, I've only had experience editing Sony RAW files, which are pretty flat for the most part, and it takes a lot of editing to get them to a point where you're happy. But with the Ricoh RAW files, I felt like I didn't have to do as much to be satisfied with the image. I want to be able to say that the color rendering is good, but I'm just not that much of a technical person to be able to make that statement with confidence. So I'll just keep it simple. The files are nice to edit. Ricoh's snap focus was also pretty intriguing to me, and essentially what it is, snap focus is a focus mode where you can pre-focus the camera at a certain distance. Drinking game, take a shot every time I said focus. I've used that mode quite a bit, and honestly my experience has been kind of hit or miss, but I think it's a matter of repetition and just trying to find out what distance works best for you. I have my distance set to 2.5 meters, which basically means that anything 2.5 meters and further will be in focus, and I'm also shooting in f8 and auto ISO. Most of the time the camera will focus on the intended subject, but there have been moments where it would focus on the background, and I really think this is just a matter of learning what distance works best for your style of shooting. I trust this camera enough to be the only one that I bring with me in certain cases. I'm able to bring this thing with me when I'm out walking my dog or doing errands or going to a concert where it would just be too much of a hassle to bring my Sony, and this allows me to get those photos that otherwise I wouldn't shoot. It's made daily photography more fun and accessible, even though I still am getting used to it. I'm slowly headed towards the ferry. Oh my God, look at that car. I'll show you in a bit. Anyways, I'm slowly headed towards the ferry. We're just gonna shoot with this the entire time, see how it does. And after that, I'll figure it out. I don't really have a plan, so yeah, let's do it. All right, I'm gonna circle back around because I don't know if he wants to be photographed, but I'm gonna take a photo anyways, see how it goes. All right, that was pretty good, I think. Yeah, he's pretty sharp. Now, with all the good things about this camera, let's talk about some of the things that I don't like. If you're saving up for this camera, I'd maybe consider saving up a little bit more in order to buy extra batteries. The batteries are not that big, so in turn, they don't last very long, and if you don't make it a habit of turning off the camera when you're not using it, they will die on you pretty quickly. I have 2 Ricoh batteries and 2 third-party batteries, which will last me basically most of the day if I'm turning it off when I'm not using it. So the first battery in the Ricoh is almost dead. I do have a second one, and if I really want to, I can use my portable charger to charge the first one that dies, but I don't know if I'm gonna do that. I also have my Sony with me, and I do want to shoot a little bit on the 50mm, so I guess we'll see. Another thing that sucks is the video. Like, it's genuinely bad. But I don't need this camera for video, so it's fine, and I doubt that if you're buying this camera, it's gonna be for its video capabilities, but if you're expecting any kind of good quality footage out of this, don't. The lack of a viewfinder is a bummer, and it takes some getting used to only looking at the LCD screen, which is also not very good quality. And you can buy a viewfinder online, but from what I've seen, they're pretty expensive, and these are things that you obviously sacrifice for the size of the camera, but I think a future improvement that would be really important is a better quality LCD screen that flips out. I would probably buy the GR4 for that alone. To my knowledge, this camera is also not weather sealed. In my case, that's not a huge problem because if I wanted to shoot in the rain or snow, I could just bring my Sony out. But if you're out shooting with this and you get caught in some heavier rain, then you're probably gonna want to put it away. So that's just something to keep in mind. Another issue that I've heard of is that Ricohs can get dust on the sensor after a while, so hopefully that doesn't happen to me, but I was given this hood by Faisal to try to avoid that problem for as long as I can. The build quality of this camera also isn't fantastic for a $1,000 camera. It feels a little bit cheap, but I do have the hood on for added protection. I probably put a little bit too much faith into this wrist strap, but I also recently bought screen protectors, so I guess I'm a little bit more at ease. The last thing is a bit of a nitpick, but if you want to delete photos in camera, you can either only do one or all. You can't select multiple images to delete, so it can become a little bit time consuming.
It's kind of not that.
I've only had this camera for a little bit over a month, but so far the experience has been mostly positive, and I'm looking forward to getting more comfortable with the camera as I use it. It's a bit of a headache to get set up and learn the menu system and the custom functions, but like any new camera system, you learn it over time. I guess my last downside to this camera would be the price. If you buy new, they cost just over $1,000, but it's also really hard to find them new these days. So my best advice would be just keep an eye out on the used market. But if you're looking for a really small and powerful camera that produces some great images, then I would definitely recommend this. You'll definitely be seeing this camera in future videos of mine, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss them. And if you found any value in this video, then consider leaving a like. That's all I got. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.